Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem fielded fiery questions from lawmakers today over her handling of the Trump administration's immigration agenda.
And Alice Gaynor monitored it for us today, and she joins us now with some of what was said. Alice?
Christine and Jessica, this marked her first congressional appearance since the shooting deaths of 2 people in Minneapolis by immigration agents. The hearing lasted nearly 5 hours, during which Republican Senator Thom Tillis called her leadership a disaster. Secretary Noem defended her agency and blamed activists and others for attacks against officers.
Javier and Marimar, would you please stand?
Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal told Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem these 3 people are U.S. citizens who had been arrested by immigration agents. One of them was shot 5 times by an immigration agent.
Hi, y'all. It's Adam here. There are some days in Washington when the wheels come off so spectacularly that you can almost hear the grinding metal from miles away. This was one of those days. Kristi Noem, the Secretary of Homeland Security, walked into a Senate hearing expecting the usual grilling about border policy and department funding. What she got instead was a public execution. 3 topics, 3 separate scandals. 3 different lines of questioning that left her stammering, silent, and visibly crumbling in real time.
Could you explain this?
Sir, I'm looking at a picture of an interior, looks like a bedroom.
Of an airplane?
Yes, sir.
You're not familiar with that?
These photos are not accurate. If you're referring to the airplanes that the Department of Homeland Security has purchased and are purchasing, we're using them for long-range command and control aircraft that is dictated in statute by Congress for the Department of Homeland Security to have a plane.
Luxury jet with a bedroom in it?
Yeah, we used a 737. I've been on it once, but it is being used by other administration officials, and it is used for command and control flights for the department. The department has found that in purchasing our aircraft, that we will save the taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars.
Does it have a bedroom
in fact, we spent $1.42 billion on ICE deportation flights last year.
Does it have a bedroom in it?
I believe it's being refurbished and not having a bedroom in it. So it is being refurbished.
Misappropriated government funds, Americans shot in the street, and an extramarital affair conducted on the taxpayer's dime aboard a luxury government aircraft. She was asked about all 3 today. And her responses? Silence. Frantic non-answers. Slurring denials that embarrassed not just Noem, but the man who put her in charge.
Wouldn't you agree with me that no U.S. citizen simply working lawfully should be arrested?
In law enforcement operations across the country, there are times when U.S. citizens
simple yes or no.
may be arrested or detained until
Would
their
you
identity
agree
is
with me,
confirmed
Madam
and that they haven't
Secretary,
committed a
US
crime.
citizens-
Noem was asked repeatedly about domestic terrorism comments she made after Renee Good and Alex Preddy were fatally shot by immigration agents in Minneapolis.
I did not call him a domestic terrorist. I said it appeared to be an incident of.
Donald Trump sat watching this unfold, and according to sources, he is panicking. Because this isn't just about Noem anymore. This is about an administration crumbling so fast that even Republican senators are now calling for her resignation. Let's start with the affair, because that's where the hearing began and where Noem looked most uncomfortable. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse didn't dance around the subject. He went straight at it. He asked about Corey Lewandowski, the special government contractor who has become Noem's constant companion. Lewandowski, for those who haven't followed this saga, holds a unique position in the Trump universe. He's a special government employee, a designation that exempts him from standard ethics rules and allows him to profit massively from his proximity to power. And profit he has. Lewandowski has been leveraging his relationship with Noem to steer lucrative contracts to Palantir and other data surveillance companies. Companies run by the same oligarchs who have bankrolled Trump's political operations for years. Companies that are now cashing in on Noem's expansion of immigration enforcement, her concentration camp policies, her whole apparatus of cruelty dressed up as Homeland Security. The affair itself is what Washington insiders call an open secret. Everyone knows, everyone talks about it, but no one has been willing to ask about it directly until today, White House asked. and Noem had no answer. She sat there, frozen, while the senator laid out the timeline. The expensive government jet. The $80 to $90 million worth of aircraft that Noem uses as her personal shuttle. The special blanket that Lewandowski threatened to fire a pilot over because it wasn't on board. The blanket that sources say wasn't the only thing keeping Lewandowski warm on those long flights. The image is seared into the public consciousness now. Two people with power, access, and zero accountability, using your money, your tax dollars, to conduct an affair in the sky while the pilot fears for his job over a missing piece of fabric. But the affair, as embarrassing as it is only part of the story. Because while Noem was struggling to answer questions about her personal life, Senator Thom Tillis of North Carolina was waiting with something far more damaging. Tillis, a Republican, has had enough. He stood up in that hearing and called for Noem's resignation. Not quietly, not behind closed doors, publicly, on the record. A Republican senator telling a Trump cabinet secretary that she needs to go. That is the kind of moment that shifts the ground beneath an administration. Tillis didn't just ask about policy disagreements. He asked about FEMA. He asked about why Noem is systematically dismantling the agency responsible for disaster response. He asked about Americans dying because Noem doesn't care. He asked about the misappropriation of funds, the wasteful spending, the contracts going to friends and donors while regular people lose everything in floods and fires and hurricanes. And Noem had no answer for that either. Let's be clear about what Noem has done to FEMA. She has starved it, she has redirected its funding, she has gutted its staffing, she has turned a disaster response agency into a shell of itself while simultaneously claiming that Homeland Security requires every dollar she can get her hands on. The result? Americans have died. Americans who needed help after natural disasters, who waited for FEMA to show up while Noem was flying around in her luxury jet with her boyfriend, who never got the help they needed because the money was somewhere else. Tillis laid that out in painful detail, and Noem sat there in silence. Now, here's where this gets even worse for Trump. Because while Noem was being eviscerated in the Senate, another Republican was making an admission that undercuts everything the administration has been saying about national security. Mike Lawler, a New York Republican in a tough re-election fight, stood up and said something remarkable. He said it would be shameful if Democratic leadership did not step in to fully fund DHS after Donald Trump started a war with Iran. Read that again. A Republican congressman just admitted that Trump's unauthorized war with Iran has created such a security crisis that DHS needs emergency funding. The same DHS that Noem runs, the same DHS that has been funneling money to Noem's pet projects and Lewandowski's contractor friends, the same DHS that can't seem to find funding for disaster response but always has money for another luxury jet flight. Lawler's admission is devastating for three reasons. First, it confirms that Trump started a war without congressional authorization. Second, it confirms that this war has made America less safe, not more. Third, it confirms that the administration's own people know they've created a crisis they can't handle. Lawler is essentially saying, "We broke it, now Democrats need to pay to fix it." That is not a winning message for a party trying to project strength and competence going into the midterms. And let's talk about that war for a moment, because it's the backdrop for everything else that's happening. Trump ordered strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities based on what the military has now called a delusional pretext. The alleged assassination threat against Trump personally was not credible. The intelligence was shaky, the justification was manufactured, and yet American service members are dead because of it. 4 Americans confirmed dead because Trump wanted to look tough and do Netanyahu's bidding. Marco Rubio and Mike Johnson have both admitted this quietly, in the kind of offhand comments that don't make headlines but should. 4 families are grieving because Donald Trump started a war to protect himself from a threat that didn't exist. Now, back to Noem. Because her breakdown in that hearing wasn't just about the questions she couldn't answer, it was about what those questions represent. The entire Trump administration is now under a microscope. Every scandal, every affair, every misappropriated dollar, every dead American is being examined in real time. And the dam is breaking. When Republican senators start calling for Republican cabinet secretaries to resign, when they start admitting publicly that Trump's actions have created security crises, when they stop circling the wagons and start pointing fingers, the end is near. Noem's defenders will say this is all personal, that it's about her private life, that it shouldn't matter. But here's the thing. It's not just about the affair. It's about what the affair represents. It's about using government resources for personal gratification while Americans die waiting for FEMA. It's about handing contracts to friends and donors while disaster victims get nothing. It's about threatening to fire a pilot over a blanket while families bury their dead. It's about a culture of corruption and entitlement that has infected every level of this administration. And that culture is now being exposed, one hearing at a time. The Lewandowski connection makes it even worse. Because Lewandowski isn't just Noem's boyfriend, he's a profiteer. He's using his access to steer millions in government contracts to companies that support Trump politically. He's cashing in on his position in ways that would be illegal if he were a regular government employee. But he's not regular. He's special. Special government employee status means he doesn't have to file the same ethics disclosures. He doesn't have to follow the same conflict of interest rules. He can profit openly and legally from his proximity to power. And the contracts he's steering? They're going to companies like Palantir, run by Peter Thiel and other Trump donors. Companies that provide the surveillance infrastructure for Noem's immigration crackdown. Companies that are building the technology to track, detain, and deport. It's a perfect circle of corruption. Donors give money, companies get contracts, officials get perks. And the American people pay for all of it. Tillis didn't mention Lewandowski by name in the hearing, but he didn't have to. Everyone in that room knew what he was talking about when he asked about misappropriated funds. Everyone knew about the jet. Everyone knew about the blanket. Everyone knew about the threats to the pilot. And everyone knew that Noem had no defense because there is no defense. You can't justify threatening to fire someone over a missing blanket when you're flying around on a multi-million-dollar aircraft paid for by taxpayers. You can't explain away the contracts going to donors when FEMA is running on fumes. You can't spin your way out of this because the facts are too clear. Trump's panic is understandable. He's watching his administration collapse in slow motion. Every day brings a new scandal. Every hearing exposes new corruption. Every Republican senator who breaks ranks makes it harder to maintain the fiction that this is all a witch hunt. And now his own hand-picked Homeland Security Secretary is being publicly shredded by members of his own party. Where does he go from here? He can't fire Noem without admitting she was a mistake. He can't defend her without owning her scandals. He can't ignore it because the hearings are on C-SPAN for everyone to see. He's trapped. And while all this is happening, the war in Iran continues. American service members remain in harm's way. The death toll could rise, and the justification for being there gets weaker every day as more evidence emerges that Trump acted on false pretenses. The same intelligence community that warned against this war is now being vindicated. The same generals who resisted Trump's orders are now being proven right. And the same Republican senators who voted to confirm Noem are now calling for her head. It's a complete collapse of the Trump project in real time. Mike Lawler's comment about DHS funding is the perfect coda to this whole disaster. He's essentially admitting that Trump's actions have made the country less safe. He's admitting that DHS needs more money because of what Trump did, not despite it. He's admitting that the administration's own policies have created the very crises they claim to be solving. And he's doing it publicly, on the record, where everyone can see it. That is not the behavior of a party confident in its leadership. That is the behavior of a party preparing to jump ship. So where does this leave Noem? It leaves her with a career in tatters, a reputation destroyed, and a very real possibility of criminal investigation into her use of government funds. The misappropriation questions aren't going away. The contracts aren't going away. The dead Americans aren't going away. And the affair, as embarrassing as it is now part of the public record. Every time her name comes up, so will Lewandowski's. Every time she tries to talk about policy, someone will ask about the jet. Every time she appears in public, someone will remember the blanket. She is damaged goods and everyone knows it. Trump's panic is justified. Because if they can do this to Noem, if they can drag her into a hearing and eviscerate her in front of the cameras, if they can make her sit there in silence while senators detail her corruption, then no one is safe. Every cabinet secretary has skeletons. Every Trump appointee has something in their past that could be exposed. And now that the dam is broken, now that Republican senators are willing to go after their own, the flood is coming. Noem is just the first. She won't be the last. The bottom line is this. Kristi Noem broke down today because she had nowhere to hide. The affair, the money, the dead Americans, it all caught up with her at once. And Donald Trump watched it happen, powerless to stop it, powerless to defend her, powerless to do anything but panic as another piece of his administration crumbled to dust. The hearings will continue. The scandals will keep coming. And eventually, there won't be anyone left to call to the witness table. They'll all be gone, either resigned or fired or indicted, and Trump will be left standing alone, wondering how it all fell apart so fast.